Гей-гей, добрый день, добрый вечер, мои дорогие зрители, дорогие ребята и девчата. Начинаю новое видео по изучению SwiftUI. Прохожу день 100 дней SwiftUI от Пола Хадсона. Вчера произошло великое событие. Я дошел до того момента, на котором закончил в прошлую версию курса. Это день 95. Я его прошел, ну, кроме челленджа. Челленджи я оставляю за кадром и потом покажу результат, чтобы не терять много времени. И сейчас перехожу к последнему проекту в этом курсе. Это проект номер какой-то, 19-й. День 96, 97, 98, 99. Я пока не знаю, что там, про что там, о чем. Вот. Но и я не думаю, что я сегодня это успею вот сейчас пройти в этом видео, потому что у меня буквально есть пару часов для стрима. Для стрима. Поэтому долго не буду растягивать и приступаю к первому дню. Фиксирую данную информацию. И полетели. Значит, день 96, проект 19, часть 1. Давай сначала на английском прочитаю. Although all our projects so far work on iPads, we haven't really taken the time to stop and focus on it in any depth. Well, the changes in our project because the changes in our new project because we're going to be building an app that takes advantage of all the extra space iPads offer. And even takes advantage of the space offered by max-sized iPhones and in landscape orientation. Even though Apple forked iOS into iPadOS in 2019, iPads and iPhones are almost identical in terms of their software. This means we can write code that works on both platforms at the same time, making only a handful of changes to really make the most of each environment. When Steve Jobs launched the first iPad back in 2010, he said, because we already shipped over 75 million iPhones, there are already 75 million users who know how to use the iPad. This means users benefit from the similarity of the two platforms as well, because they instantly know how to use our apps on iPad, thanks to existing usage on iPhone. Although a common user interface can look and feel great, never underestimate the power of this built-in knowledge. Today we have 5 topics to walk through, in which you'll learn about split view controllers, binding an alert to an optional. Это вроде бы я уже как будто бы знаю. А может быть и не знаю. Using groups for flexible layout and more. А, нет, оно было раньше, когда item можно было привязывать. А как в этой версии, не знаю. Ну, так или иначе. Переходим далее. Что? Полетели. SnowSeeker. Введение. Поисковик снега. В нашем проекте мы создадим приложение SnowSeeker. An app to let users browse ski resorts around the world to help them find one suitable for their next holiday. This will be the first app where we specifically aim to make something that works great on iPad by showing 2 views side by side. But you'll also get deep into solving problematic layouts, learn a new way to show sheets and alerts, and more. As always, we have some techniques to cover before getting into the main project, so please create a new iOS project using the app template, calling it SnowSeeker. Let's go. Окей. Я сделаю это прямо сейчас. Create new project. Ладно, Тут показывать-то нечего. И назову его SnowSeeker. Next. Как я тут раньше называл? День такой-то, да? Ну, давай. Day 96. SnowSeeker. Create. Let's go. Переходим ко второй части. Итак, полетели. Второй раздел из этого дня. Working with two side-by-side views in SwiftUI. Полетели. В этот раз без ускорения. Может, даже с замедлением.
You're already familiar with the basic usage of navigation stack, which lets us create views like this one here. We could say, let's say a navigation stack with text, hello world, and then nav title of primary, like so. And that works great on iPhone, but on iPad, it's less than ideal. There we have much, much bigger screens to work with. That is 12.9-inch iPad Pro. You end up with this screen where there's this huge empty space on here. It's a poor use of space. And it also creates quite a jarring experience when new views slide all the way across the screen. In these situations, it's a better idea to use a different view for navigation called NavigationSplitView. This lets us specify either 2 or 3 columns to show side by side, and iPadOS takes care of showing or hiding them at the right times, depending on the exact configuration of the device. Let's try it with some simple code here. I'm going to say there is a navigation split view, hello dogs, with a text of primary on the left, like that, and then a detail area showing the text of content, like that. So what you see now depends on which device you're using. I'm going to use iPad. Let's use iPhone 15 Pro first. Here, my dog a treat each because they look hungry, like usual. Come on, quick chat. Yep. 1, 2. Good dogs. So on iPhone, I'm just seeing primary. Okay, I'm not seeing content at all. Just the word primary. I can go to landscape mode. It's the same thing either way around. If you try a large device, you see something different. It's interesting here. Let's go back to our iPad again and then press Command R. And what you see here depends on orientation and also whether you have other apps running. So here I have primary and content side by side. I'm in landscape mode on iPad Pro. This button here on the leading edge of the primary screen lets us toggle whether that sidebar is showing or not. I can bring it in or out freely. In portrait mode, now the sidebar is just gone by default. And when I bring it out, it kind of slides over the content, dimming it slightly. When I'm going to tap on the content again, it gets rid of the primary completely. So it's kind of just temporary here. Now, iPadOS does 2 very clever things here. First, regardless of device orientation, you will see this button happening for you up here in the navigation area, so users can choose what layout they want at any given time. But second, when you activate multitasking, when you press these buttons up here and then bring up a different app, for example, let's say I'm going to do split view with Safari. Boom. Now it knows the space available is now less on the side here. So even though I'm in landscape mode, it's moved across to having that slide over approach instead we saw in portrait. It sees the amount of free space has decreased because Safari is now there. This is neat. Now, SwiftUI automatically links the primary and secondary views for us, which means if you have a navigation link, there's no more treats, dogs. That's it. Come on, clear off. Clear off. If you have a navigation link in the primary view, it'll automatically load its content in the secondary view. For example, I could say down here, let's make this text primary into navigation link primary. And when that's tapped, we'll do text saying new view. Let's go ahead and run that back. I'll go back to the iPad Pro. Let's get rid of Safari so we see the full sort of large iPad experience. This is now a link I can tap on. So I press primary. It did say content, and now, boom, it says new view. So as I'm changing views here on this leading side, our little primary area, it changes what you see in the right-hand area where our content is. Now, there are some ways you can customize the split views behavior. For example, you can tell iOS to prefer to keep the primary view around when space is partially limited. To do that, we're going to, in our initializer here for the split view, we're going to say that column visibility, enter, give me all the junk please, is .constant.all, like that. And then we'll add a modifier, which is NavigationSplitView style.balanced. So we're saying I'm requesting that all columns should be visible here in a balanced style. And the result is that iPads running even in portrait mode will now show the primary view like that. So it was previously all content. I was saying now if you can, show them all and get a good balance between the two, which is what's happening here. Now, this column visibility thing is actually provided as a binding. I'm saying the constant binding, just all, that's always all. But you could have an @state property storing some visibility value and change it dynamically over time. Second, you can tell system to prefer the detail view by default, which is really helpful on iPhone where the primary view is selected as standard. So let's go back to iPhone again, over here. I press play. We have primary right now. I can say instead, let's use preferred compact column. This one here. I'm going to say I want to prefer using .constant.detail. Again, get rid of the extra junk, get filled in for me. Thanks, edit code. And I'm now saying it was primary by default on iPhone. Let's run it again. It should be detail by default, saying the word content. Boom. There we go. Again, this is a binding, so you can change it as a local state property over time if you want to.
Так, секундочку. Preferred compact column. Detail. Не то. Не то.
Finally.
Не finally, подожди.
Constant.detail. Again, get rid of the extra junk, get filled in for me. Thanks, edit code. I'm now saying it was primary by default on iPhone. Let's run it again. It should be detail by default, saying the word content. Boom. There we go. Again, this is a binding, so you can change it as a local state property over time if you want to. Finally, you can, if you want to, use the toolbar.hidden for navigation bar modifier we used previously. It'll hide the toolbar for your detail view, but be careful. If we do it here, if we said something like, let's do toolbar is .hidden for navigation bar. Let's go back to a simple split view like just that, and then use iPad Pro. So we're saying go real big, hide navigation bar. And here we are in landscape mode. There's our primary view. Over in portrait mode, we have no button to get access to that sidebar area. It's gone. Now you can swipe over, like pull in like I'm doing there, but you just have to know about that. There's no obvious affordance on the screen to tap on, which is not great. One last tip, you can, if you want to, add a third view to a navigation split view, which lets you add a sidebar as well as content and details. So you've got sort of a 3-level approach going on. You'll see us normally in apps like Notes has it, Mail has it, where you have like a Notes top level area, like all notes or iCloud only notes or on my device only notes. And then inside that group is another subgroup of, okay, here are the notes in your iCloud, here are the notes that are all notes, whatever. and then you choose a note, you see the actual note. It's like a 3-level thing. And they all trickle down to each other. So the top level one selects things in second level selects things in the main content area like that.
Окей, это интересно, конечно. Перед тем, как продолжить, я это все Что? Чу? Сначала, конечно, мне придется закоммитить предыдущие дни. Cards. А вообще-то не буду. Вообще-то не буду. Флэш-зимой тоже пока что там челлендж остался. В общем, буду. День 96. Вот так. День 96. Часть первая. Как она у нас называлась? Working with two side by side views. Commit to main. Окей, переходим к следующему видео. Использование алертов и sheet с опциональными значениями.
SwiftUI has 2 ways of making alerts and sheets, and so far we've mostly only used one, a binding to a boolean that shows the alert or sheet when that boolean becomes true. The second option allows us to bind an optional value to the alert or sheet. The key here is to use an optional and definable object as a condition for showing the sheet. And the closure hands you the non-optional value unwrapped safely that was used for the condition, so you can then use it safely. To show us off, let's make a new little user struct in here that conforms to the identifiable protocol. I'll say struct user is identifiable, has an ID property equal to Taylor Swift, like that. And then our content view will make a little property here that stores which user is selected, set to nil by default. So I'll say at state, private var, selected user is an optional user equal to nil by default. So now we can change the body of our content view. So it sets selected user to a value when a button is tapped, then displays a sheet when selected user has a value. So I'll say here we have a button saying tap me that's assigned to selected user a new user instance as a sheet attached. And we're not going to use sheet is presented, we're going to use sheet item like this. So item this time is $selected user. And then inside here I'll say user in. And this will be the...
Вот этот item, он сейчас покажет, что он deprecated.
Unwrapped user value when it exists.
Вроде бы.
So inside here I can say text user.id, and that is perfectly allowed. It's not optional. It'll only be in this closure on line 22 when it actually has a value. So let's press Command R now. See tap
Не
me.
понял сейчас
Press
вообще.
on that. Boom. Taylor Swift slides up. When I swipe away, this value is set back to being nil again. There's no one currently selected. Now, alerts have similar functionality, although here you've got to pass in both the Boolean and the identifiable value at the same time. This allows you to show the alert we need it, but also benefit from that same optional unwrapping behavior we have with sheets. First, add a Boolean property in here that will watch some value to be true or false. So we'll say at state private var is showing user is false. And that's what we care about. That's when it triggers our sheet being shown or not. We'll then toggle this value in the button's action. We'll do is showing user is true. And finally, change out this sheet modifier for an alert modifier watching that Boolean. I'll say alert here. Let's title as welcome, is presented, is dollar is showing user. And presenting, this time you write it as just selected user. It's not a binding anymore because that's being changed in the is presented binding right here. Give me the user coming in, and now we'll just do button user.id like so. So it should show Taylor Swift as the button title. Let's press Command R and find out. Tap me, press Taylor Swift. So, with that covered, you now know practically all there is to know about sheets and alerts. But there is one last thing I want to sneak in just to round out your knowledge. When we're presenting a sheet, which is what we had before with the sheet modifier, so like there, we can add presentation to tense to the view being shown to make the sheet take up less than the full screen space.
Ну, этого разве не было раньше в курсе, или это я сам где-то изучал?
By using the presentation to tense modifier, which accepts a set of sizes to use for the sheet. For example, we could say, I want to have medium and large sizes for this thing. So attached to the text inside the sheet, I'm going to say, let's do dot presentation to tense dot medium and dot large. So two options here, and we're specifying two sizes here, which means the initial size medium will be used for our sheet by default. When I press tap me here, it slides up and it's only part way the size of the screen, not the full screen anymore. But we also said we support large detent as well. We support 2 detents here. As a result, this little grab handle appears and lets us pull it upwards to be a full size view or a half size view, depending on what you want.
Я уже все знал. Кроме вот, я даже знал про этот инициализатор для алерта, с исключением, что вот я не знал, типа, presenting, я и думал, что туда, типа, тип нужно какой-то в данных написать или объект конкретно, который нужно использовать. Ну, короче, вот это прояснилось, и все. А так, прикольно, что остальное все я знал. Так, me. Так, коммитим. Конечно, да. Часть 2, using alert and sheet with optionals. Commit. Следующее упражнение. Берем мячи. Положили мячи, взяли обручи. Использование групп как прозрачный контейнер слоя. Что-то типа того. Using groups as transparent layout containers. Это тоже я уже использую.
SwiftUI's group view might seem odd at first because it doesn't actually affect our layout at all. However, it performs an important purpose as a transparent layout container. It gives us the ability to add SwiftUI modifiers to multiple views without changing their layout, or send back multiple views without using view builders. For example, we could build a little struct in here called userView. And this will be a view, like so. And in the body for this view, I'm going to make a group with 3 text views inside. We'll do text name is Paul, then text country is England, then text pets, Luna and Aria, like that. Now I'll apply one modifier here, which is the font of title, but otherwise this group has no layout information. It doesn't say vertical, horizontal, whatever. All we're doing is saying apply the same title modifier to everything in that group at once.
Так, не тарахти. Еще раз.
Pets, Luna and Aria, like that.
Так
Now I'll
собаки его
apply
зовут.
one modifier here, which is the font of title, but otherwise this group has no layout information. It doesn't say vertical, horizontal, whatever. All we're doing is saying apply the same title modifier to everything in that group at once. But there's no layout information. So we don't know if it's stacked horizontally, vertically, or by depth or whatever. And this is where the transparent layout behavior of group becomes important. Whatever parent places a user view gets to decide how its text views get arranged. For example, we can make a little content view here with a property to track if we're showing vertical layout or horizontal layout. I could say here at state private var layout vertically is false. And then in the body property, I'm going to make a button that toggles layout vertically. So we're moving between our layout styles. And for the label, if we are currently layout vertically, then do a VStack with our user view inside. But if we're not laying out vertically, do a HStack with our user view inside.
Так, помедленнее я записываю.
So flipping
If layout vertically, else we stack user view h stack user view.
between horizontal and vertical layout every time this button is pressed. Let's press Command R now, give it a quick try.
Give it a
There it's
try.
horizontal, pressing it, now it's vertical. So you can see it's working nicely. Now you might wonder how often you have to have alternative layouts like this one here, but the answer might surprise you. It's really common. You see, it's exactly what you want to happen when trying to write code that works across multiple device sizes. If you want layout to happen vertically because the horizontal space is constrained, but layout horizontally otherwise, it's perfect for that. Well, Apple provides a very simple solution for this called size classes, which is a thoroughly vague way of telling us how much space we have for our views. Now, when I say thoroughly vague, I mean it. We have only two size classes, horizontally and vertically, called compact and regular. And that's it. That covers all screen sizes from the largest iPad Pro in landscape down to the smallest iPhone in portrait. That doesn't mean it's useless. Far from it. Just that it only lets us reason about our UI in the broadest of terms. To show these in action, we're going to make a view that has a property to track the current horizontal size class. So we can switch between a VStack and HStack automatically. We could say, for example, in here, I want a new environment value using dot horizontal size class called var horizontal size class. And then in our view body, let's get rid of the button entirely. And I'll simply say this condition is going to be if our horizontal size class is equal to dot compact, use VStack, otherwise use HStack. Let's press Command R, see how it looks. So in portrait mode, there is VStack. In landscape mode, they go across the way. I should say, by the way, in situations like this one where you have only one of these views inside your stacks, you can pass the views initializer directly to the VStack or HStack to make your code a bit.
Это затарахтел. А не надо.
Compact, use VStack, otherwise use HStack. Let's press Command R, see how it looks. So in portrait mode, there is VStack. In landscape mode, they go across the way. I should say, by the way, in situations like this one where you have only one of these views inside your stacks, you can pass the views initializer directly to the VStack or HStack to make your code a bit shorter. You could say here, the content is userView.init directly, pass that right in. Same for HStack. Here, userView.init. And it'll work the same way. I know short code isn't everything, but this technique is pleasingly concise when using this approach to group layout. Now, what you see when the code runs depends on the device you're using. For example, you can see here I have my 15 Pro Max going between VStack and HStack correctly, but an iPhone 15 Pro, not a Pro Max, has a compact horizontal size class in both portrait and landscape, and so it'll stay as a VStack the entire time. Regardless of whether we're toggling our layout with size classes or buttons, the point is that our user view doesn't actually care. Its group just groups text views together without affecting the layout at all. So the layout arrangement on user view is given depends entirely on how it's used elsewhere. Now, before I'm done, I want to mention one thing. SwiftUI does provide a view that goes some way towards making this behavior easier to use. It's called ViewThatFits, and you can provide this thing with several different layouts, and it'll automatically try each one in order until it finds one that can be fitted into the available space. For example, we could say, let's get rid of some code here. We could say as a view that fits, and inside there is a rectangle with a frame width of 500, height of 200. So it'll try and fit that one first. If that fails, it'll go to the next one. I'll say it's a circle with a frame width of 200, height of 200. If that fails, the next one. If that fails, the next one. It'll work all its way down the line until it finds one that finally succeeds. And this is a better way of working if possible, right? So see now, I'm in portrait mode. That thing is not wide enough to fit a 500-point wide rectangle, as we see a circle. But in landscape mode, it will fit, hence why we now see a landscape. If you can use view that fits, then you should. Because if you show the same view in several different forms, SwiftUI will correctly preserve the view state as the layout changes. However, it does limit the amount of control you get.
Оказывается, я не знал. Классно, мне это очень понравилось. ViewThatFits. Что еще было нового? Просто пишу сразу пометки. Новое у нас было environment property horizontal horizontal size class. Что еще было нового, интересного? Group is layout neutral. Типа того. Что еще было интересного? Непосредственно NavigationSplitView. With all different initializers. Окей, в принципе, в целом все. Ну, еще интересно было. Ну, в принципе, ладно, это не было таким прям большим чем-то. Ну, таким образом мы что сделали? Мы закончили часть 3, что ли, этого дня. Ну да, даже 4 получается. Ну ладно, 3. Следующее я уже тоже использовал. Так, секундочку сначала. Using groups as transparent layout container. Поехали. Так, сейчас поедем. Следующее видео. Making a SwiftUI view searchable. Насчет SwiftUI view, чтобы был searchable, не уверен. Я делал только searchable, типа данные. Но может быть это то же самое. Ну да, то же самое.
iOS can add a search bar to our views using the searchable modifier, and we can bind a string property to it to filter our data as the user types. To see how it works, we'll try a simple example here. I'll add a property in our content view to type to track what they're searching for right now. We'll say @state private var search text is an empty string by default. Then add a navigation stack in our view body. In there will be a text saying searching for. I'll just do search text as string interpolation. And then attach the searchable modifier. We want to search for the text of our search text, with the prompt being look for something. Oops, crazy. Look something. I'll also add a nav title here of searching. Let's run it back. And you'll see we have searching for nothing at all and this search bar up here at the top inside a navigation bar. If I go into there and type for hello, we'll see hello appear here correctly. As I type more, it'll just keep on updating nicely. Now in practice, searchable is best used with some kind of data filtering, and that way it'll work really well because the state property, when it changes, will reinvoke your body property automatically, therefore re-triggering your filtering. It works very, very well. And so it's common to use, for example, a computed property to handle the actual filtering. For example, we could say, here's our search text. Let's also add a list of names we want to look through. I could say, let all names, with capital N, be an array of, let's do Sub, let's do Vina, let's do Melvin, and let's do Stephanie. And then we'll add a new property in here called filtered names that returns an array of strings. And inside here, if our search text is currently empty, we'll just send back all our names. But if there is something in search text, we're going to filter all names, which means we'll pass every item in there, Sub, then Vina, then Melvin, then Stephanie, through a test of our choosing. Give me one name coming in here. And we'll return true if this thing contains our search text. So I can write here, does our name have localized standard contains of our search text. This is the best way to look for one substring inside another one when a user is searching for text directly.
Так.
So does this thing, search text, live somewhere inside name? It ignores case by default. It's a really, really nice way of working. And then in our main view body here, we'd say, let's not just do a simple text anymore. Let's do a list of our filtered names using self for the identifier. One name coming in, and then simply show that name in a text view here. Now, when that runs, we'll see our list of stuff. There's our search box at the top as before, but now this list below is showing the items from that search. If I go in and search for V, for example, we'll get Vina and Melvin correctly here. You might find sometimes that iOS actually hides this search bar by default. Depends on what you have on the screen. But if it isn't there, it's just a little pull down go a long way. So again, let's just clarify one important thing here. This localized standard contains method is the right way, the best way to handle searching for user input, because it automatically ignores case, uppercase and lowercase, which is why Vina and Melvin match for the letter V, but also accents like the E in cafe. Now, iOS does not require we make our list searchable, but it really makes a huge difference to users.
Так, окей. Я уже работал с этим searchable, но здесь он дает некоторые интересные моменты, как это лучше использовать. Так, что он дает интересное здесь? Так. Ну, хотя ладно. В принципе, я все это знал. Но вот этот модификатор localized, точнее метод localized standard contains интересный. Было интересно. Так, и надо еще это закоммитить, конечно. Коммитим как мы, как обычно. 96, часть 4. Making SwiftUI view searchable. Making SwiftUI view searchable. Making a SwiftUI view. Какой-то SwiftUI view. Окей. Летим дальше. И последнее видео с этого дня. Sharing observable. Последнее видео из этого дня. Sharing observable objects through SwiftUI's environment. Это тоже я вроде бы как знал. Там модификатор делаешь, observable object, или что-то такое. И environment object, или просто environment.
Swift's observable macro combined with @state makes it straightforward to create and use data in our apps. And previously we looked at how to pass values between different views. However, sometimes you need the same object to be shared across many places in your app. And for that, we're going to turn to SwiftUI's environment. To see how this works, let's start with some code you should already know. We'll make a small player class that can be observed by SwiftUI. I'll say @observable class player has a name string of anonymous and a high score int of 0. And we can now show their high score in a little small view just for this purpose. We'll say struct high score view is a view, and we'll tell this thing you've got to be passed in a player instance to work with. So we'll say var player is a player. Then down here in our body, we'll do text saying your high score is string interpolation player dot high score. So this expects to be given a player value to work with. So we might write code down our content view like this. First, make some local state to store the player we're working with.
Так, помедленней. Это все есть. Делаем что теперь?
Then down here in our body, we'll dot high score. So this expects to be given a player value to work with. So we might write code down our content view like this. First, make some local state to store the player we're working with. And then in the view's body, I'm going to have a vstack saying text welcome. And then our high score view passing in the player state property we made earlier. Now this is all old code. We're making a value, passing into the view. That thing here is now being used as the main view up here with this high score in place. That was working correctly. It's just a passing value to subview. That's old, okay? Usually though, we have more complex needs. What if this object, this player object here, has to be shared in many places? Or what if view A has to pass to view B, has to pass to view C, has to pass to view D? You can see how that'd be pretty tedious to code. SwiftUI has got a better solution for these problems. We can place our object into the environment, then use the @environment property wrapper to read it back out. This takes two small changes to our code. First, we no longer want to pass a value into our high score view and instead make this thing be sent in through the environment. So down here, I'm going to say let's not pass the player in here and instead use the environment modifier to inject our player into the SwiftUI environment. This modifier is designed to work with classes that use the observable macro. Now behind the scenes, one of the things this macro does is add a conformance to a protocol called observable without the @ sign, and that's what this modifier is looking for, some kind of observable conforming type. Now once an object's placed into the environment like it has been here, any subview can read it back out. In the case of our high score view, that's up here, this player, we would write @environment player.self var player. Read this value from the environment. Now, just like with other kinds of observed state, this high score view will automatically be reloaded when its properties change. Be careful though, your app will crash if you say an environment object will be there and it actually isn't when your code runs. Now, although this mostly works well, there is one place as a problem and you will almost certainly hit it. You're trying to use an environment value as a binding. Now, if you're watching this after iOS 18 was released, presumably in June this year, I sincerely hope Apple resolve this issue. I've certainly complained loudly enough to them, nicely of course, But right now, on an iOS 17.4, it's still an issue. You can see a problem if we said, let's make a stepper for our high score view. We'd say here, let's do a stepper of our high score is player.highscore, and its values bound to $player.highscore. That attempts to bind the stepper to the player's high score, and you can see it's not working. If we'd used @state locally to make a local player value, that code would have worked. But here it's saying, no, there is no $player. This binding approach does not work with the environment, at least right now. Apple's solution for this, at least until hopefully it improves in iOS 18, we'll
Спойлер, в iOS 18 это не пофиксили.
see, is to use @bindable directly in the body property. To say this, @bindable, var player is a player. And now the code compiles cleanly. And that effectively means make a copy of my player property locally, then wrap it in some bindings I can use. Honestly, it's a bit ugly. And so, again, I hope by the time you actually get to follow along with this, it's no longer needed.
Все еще needed. Все еще needed. Так, how to bind. Нет, how to make environment object bindable. Это было интересно и новое. Также environment modificator. Это есть. И на этом я хочу сказать, что закончена часть 5 из 5 в этом дне. Она называлась Sharing at Observable Object through SwiftUI's environment. Готово. На этом мы можем теперь написать следующее. Copy. Просто делаем пост. Сейчас единственное, все-таки нужно убедиться, что день 90, после дня 95 у нас ничего не было. Ла-ла-ла-ла-ла-ла-ла. Так, близко. Вот день 95. Finally finished. Challenge for Poisк scissors. Finally finished this challenge for Poisk scissors. Code on my GitHub. Так, готово. Готово. Just submitted my first. Никто мне вот на это и не ответил. Так, ну, обновления насчет дня 95 я не вижу. Going to finish last 5 days of SwiftUI in January. I'll learn much more than... Угу. Это уже вот свежачочек. Да, свежачочек. But we regularly watching all past stuff because of the course update to iOS 17. Да, это было 10 января. И вот 1 марта я заканчиваю этот день, этот курс. Плоховато, конечно, но могло быть хуже. Так что... Так, день 43. Тут вообще медленно что-то продвигался, да. 44. Updated day. 45. 46. Тут ошибка в ссылке. Да. Тут ошибка в ссылке. 50. Ну все, дальше уже пошло. 73 и так далее, и так далее. 70, 84, 88, 89, 90, 92, 93, 94. И теперь делаем пост. Finished. Updated to iOS 17. Так, и что здесь было интересного? Конечно, не все я смогу сюда поместить, но что смогу. Это можно убрать. Это тоже можно убрать. Все равно 16 символов еще. Вот это можно убрать. Нет. Вот это можно убрать. А сюда в трессом напишем побольше. Да. Отлично. Оценка отлично. День 96 пройден. У меня на это ушло час времени. Неплохо. Посмотрим, что день 97. Если сейчас я его смогу пройти, в принципе, смогу. Если... Так, ага, тут 18 минут. 3 минуты. 15 минут. Ну, да, я думаю, что его как раз я пройду и... Надеюсь, что пройду. Окей, так или иначе, день 97. Пишу тайм-код. Начинаю день 97, проект 19, часть 2. Today we're going to implement the first half of our program. Ура! Which means we'll get a list of ski resorts, a detailed view to show more information, and a navigation split view that can show them side by side. That by itself shouldn't present a problem for you, but along the way you'll also learn about loading static example data from the bundle controlling how navigation split view should show primary and secondary views on iPhone, and even how to format lists of strings more neatly. Although you already know so much of what is needed to make this code work, we're still here on day 97 introducing new things to learn. I hope you're not discouraged by that. Learning is an important skill, and in programming as well as many other industries, you can find yourself constantly trying new things throughout your whole career. That might feel hard at times, but as the Spanish painter Pablo Picasso once said, Spanish, не Italian. Pablo Picasso once said, I'm always doing which I cannot do, in order that I may learn how to do it. Я всегда делаю то, что я не умею делать, для того, чтобы я мог научиться этого делать. So keep learning and be proud to say you're still learning. It is an important skill to have. Но насчет обучения у меня точно это присутствует. Так, но перед тем, как начну... хотя нет, потом. Сегодня 4 темы. 3. What topic to work through, in which you learn about how will the primary and secondary views, show them side by side, and learn to improve an improved way to format lists and more. Окей. Переходим к первому видео. Первое видео. Building a primary list of items. 18 минут с половиной. Полетели.
In this app, we're going to display two views side by side, just like Apple's Mail and Notes app. In SwiftUI, this is done by placing two views into a navigation split view, then using a navigation link in the primary view to control what's visible in the secondary view. So, we're going to start off our project by building the primary view for our app. We'll just show a list of all ski resorts along with which country they're from and also how many ski runs it has, how many pieces you can ski down, sometimes called trails or just slopes. Now, I provided some assets for this project in the GitHub repository for this book. So if you haven't already downloaded them, please do so now. github.com/2straws/hackingwithswift. You want to grab this resorts.json file and drag that into your project navigator, like so. Make sure it's as targets and copy items like that, then press finish. And now in your asset catalog, you're going to go and grab all these images here. Just Command A, select them all, and drag them all in to the asset catalog like that. Now you'll notice straight away I've added 2x and 3x pictures for the flags. So Austria, Canada, whatever. But only 2x pictures for the resorts. Like this picture here, for example. This is useless. Come on, bigger. Useless. Come on, show me a big version of that picture. There we go. That thing there, that's only 2x. That's intentional. These flags will be shown at the right size for their resolution. So we have Retina 2x devices and Super Retina 3x devices and so forth. But these resort pictures are designed to be shown big enough to fill all the space on an iPad Pro. They're more than big enough for an iPhone, even a 3x iPhone, when they're shown on there, even though it's only a 2x image, it's perfectly fine. Now, to get our list up and running quickly, we're going to define a simple resort struct that can be loaded from our JSON. That means making it conform to codable, but to make it work better in SwiftUI, we'll also make it use hashable and identifiable too. The data itself is mostly just strings and integers. If you look in results.json, you'll see what I mean. There's big old string here, bunch of numbers here, and some more strings in an array. This is the exception. This strings array here is the interesting bit. This is facilities that describe what else there is on the resort. I should say this data is almost entirely fictional. Don't try and use this in a real app. Anyway, let's make a new Swift file with a resort inside now. I'll make a Swift file here. I'll call it resort.swift. And we'll say that our resorts are codable and hashable and identifiable like that. Now inside here, I've got a bunch of properties. I'll say we have an ID string, a name string, country string, a description string. What else do we have? Image credit, price, size, snow depth. Right, so we have image credit, string, price int, size int, snow depth int, then elevation, runs, and facilities. So elevation int, runs int, and then facility.
Так, не гони. Старичок. Во-первых, не let, а var. ID, name, country, description, image credit, price, size, var snow depth, int, var elevation, int, var runs, int, var facilities, array of strings.
These is an array of strings, like that.
Like that.
So that's the data we want to load from our JSON here. As usual, it's a good idea to have some example value in here in the model so it's easier to show working data in your designs and your previews. This time, though, there are quite a few fields to fill out. And I think it's helpful if they actually had some real data inside. So I don't want to try and make a resort by hand. Instead, we're going to load an array of resorts from JSON stored in our app bundle, which means you can reuse the same code we wrote for Project 8 previously, the bundle decodable extension. If you still have that, you can drop it in here and use it straight away. If not, I'll walk you through it anyway so you can see it in case you missed that video or whatever, right? To do that, you'll make a new file. So file's fine, make it bundle decodable. And this thing is an extension on the foundation bundle class with a new decode method that takes some kind of decodable type, like this. Give me a file name from our bundle and return the type of the thing. And we'll say in here, guardlet, our URL is self.url for resource, our file, with extension, nil. If that fails, straight away, fatal error, we failed to locate this file.
File string. Guardlet URL equals self.url for resource file with extension nil else. Фатальная ошибка. Fatal error. Failed to locate file
in the bundle. So crash the app immediately, but that's okay. There's a file in your app bundle. If it isn't there, or can't be loaded or can't be decoded, you've screwed up majorly. Don't try and recover from this in your app. Then once we have the URL to it, we'll load the data. Guardlet data is try ? Data contents of that URL. Failing that again, fatal error. Failed to load the file from bundle. If we're still here, we'll make a decoder as a new JSON decoder object, and then attempt to work through our data here. Now, what we'll say this time is we'll do a little do block. and we can catch various possibilities here. We could say, first up, let's try and do our decoding. Let's say we'll return try our decoder dot decode t.self from our data. Now, as a reminder, what we're saying here is attempt to decode some type from here. We don't know what it is. We just know it's some kind of type that is a T. And that T thing, that is the thing that says this is going to be an unknown decodable value here, provided by whoever's calling us, by whoever has said, yes, decode this thing. T could be a string, an array of strings, an integer, a Boolean, or a resort struct instance, because that conforms to the decodable protocol. So saying attempt to decode whatever we were asked to decode, whatever that happens to be here, that's the thing we want to decode at this point from the data we got. That's the goal here. Now, obviously, we want to try and catch these errors somehow. We want to try and think about how we want to try and catch these. And there's a bunch of ways you can catch this, because all sorts of things could have gone wrong. All sorts of errors could have happened here that maybe the JSON was bad, for example, or maybe you have asked for an array of strings. You actually got an array of integers. There are a bunch of ways it can go wrong. It's a good idea to try and catch these carefully and see what's happening. And so we'll do that here. We'll say, try and decode this thing, but then let's try and catch individual errors. What might have gone wrong here? So we'll say the first thing that might have gone wrong is we've got a decoding error, which is key not found. And it'll tell us the key that wasn't found and the context it wasn't found in. And we can use that to print out meaningful error messages. So a key wasn't found. For example, we asked to find the description or number of runs or whatever. It wasn't in the JSON. It wasn't found. Bang, that's a problem here. So we'll say in this situation, we'll trigger a fatal error saying failed to decode this file from our bundle due to missing key, which is that key name, like that. And now you can simply print out the context.description. This, our debug description. It'll print out extra information out of the context saying, here's what we think went wrong. So that'll happen when we look for a particular key name, it wasn't found. Then we'll have another one here. We'll catch a decoding error .type mismatch. The type I don't care about, we ignore that, but the context does matter. So I'll just do let context here. This is when you say decode runs as an integer, but it's actually found as a string. So it does exist, it's not the way you thought it would exist. So we'll say this time fatal error, failed to decode the file from our bundle due to type mismatch. And then print out the context.debug description. Next.
Нет, подожди, не next. Try decode. Ага, он так до сих пор ругается. Окей. Type mismatch. Failed to decode file from bundle due to type mismatch. Совпадение типов. Context.debug description.
Next up, we'll say catch decoding error dot value not found. So it's saying here, literally in the help file here, we expect to have a value, but we actually got back nil. Nothing was found inside there. Null was inside that value. So value not found. we can get rid of the type if you want to. Let's do the type here, and we'll do a context as well. If that happens, we'll say fatal error, fail to decode our file from the bundle due to missing type value. And again, let's print out the context debug description to help you see what's going wrong. There's one more option here, which is catching decoding error .data corrupted when the JSON literally isn't valid. We don't care what this is in terms of context, it's just bad JSON. So I'll just do fatal error, fail to decode file from bundle because it appears to be invalid JSON.
Пауза.
Now I've got to add.
Интересно, вот это вот новое для меня, ошибки декодирования. И я сталкивался с этим раньше, но сам никогда не делал. Due to from bundle because it appears to be invalid JSON. Так, data corrupted. Appears to be invalid JSON.
One more catch here, which is the Pokemon catch, named after that because you've got to catch them all. You've got to catch all possible errors. So we'll say there's a fatal error here, which is failed to decode the file from the bundle because of some error, localized description. So anything else get printed out there. And so we're basically breaking down all the possible ways this decoding can go wrong, and then printing out meaningful messages along the way. So if you made a typo, you're in here, if you've typed something wrongly in here, or typed something wrongly in here, it'll tell you exactly what was wrong so you can correct it more easily. Anyway, with that in place, we can now add some properties to our resort struct here to store our example data. And there are two options here. The first is to load two static properties. One to load all the resorts in the array and one to store the first item in that array. Like this, we could say we have static let all resorts is an array of resort equal to bundle.main.decode resorts.json, like that. And then static let example is all resorts 0. The second option is to collapse all that down to a single line of code. This requires a little bit of gentle typecasting because the code extension needs to know what type of data it's decoding. So we could say static let example is, and then in there, in parentheses, bundle.main.decode results.json as a resort array, and then read back the 0th item like that. You can do that. I wouldn't do that. I prefer the former option, which is that, because it's simpler and has a little more use in the future if you want to show random examples rather than say.
Секундочку, как он еще раз здесь сказал? Bundle, decode. Yes. Resort. Окей.
Item, like that. You can do that. I wouldn't do that. I prefer the former option, which is that,
Я тоже так
because it's
предпочитаю.
simpler and has a little more use in the future. If you want to show random examples rather than the same one again and again and again, they're all loaded now. Now, in case you were curious, when we use static let here to make these constants, Swift will automatically make them lazy for us. They won't get created until they're actually used. And this means when we try to read resort.example, then Swift will be forced to read resort.allResorts. And it'll do that first and pass the value back to resort.example, which will pass it back to whichever used the example. This means we can always be sure the two properties we run in the correct order. There's no chance of example going missing because all resorts wasn't called yet. So now our simple resort struct is done. We can use that same bundle extension to add a property in content view that loads all our resorts into a single array. So over in content view here, I'm going to say let resorts is an array of resort equal to bundle.main.decode resorts.json, like that. Now for the body of our view here, we're going to use a navigation split view with a list view inside of it, showing all our resorts. And in each row, we're going to show a small flag of which country the resort is in, the name of the resort, and also how many runs it has. Now, the size we're choosing is 40 by 25, which is smaller than our flag image source, and also a different aspect ratio. But we can fix that using the resizable modifier, plus scale to fill, and a custom frame. To make it look a little bit better on the screen, we'll add a little custom clip shape and a stroked overlay. When the row is tapped, we'll push to a detail view showing more information about the resort. We haven't built that yet, so instead we can just have a placeholder for the time being, okay? So replace the current body property with a navigation split view. Inside there's a list of our resorts, one resort handed to us. And now we'll make a navigation link with a value of that resort. In there will be a H stack. And we'll say do an image with the resort's country inside. Make it resizable so it looks nice on the screen, nice and big. Make it scale to fill. Then add a fixed frame here. We'll say as a frame width of 40, height of 25. And a clip shape of direct corner radius 5. We'll then add a gentle overlay here. Overlay here of, let's say, direct with a corner radius of 5. And then we'll stroke that in black with a line width of 1. So it looks pretty good on the screen. That's slightly wrong, so it should be rounded rectangle like that. That should be happier. Yep, there we go. And that's the country name in place. We'll add a little VStack next to that. We'll say there is a VStack here with alignment of .leading with the resort's name. Like so. I'll use a little font of headline for this, a bit bigger. And then a text of the resort.runs. Runs like that. Let's add a foreground style of secondary, because it's not quite so important. Like so. Then on our list, which is ending down.
Так, text resort name.
And here we'll add a nav title of resorts. And then on the nav split view, which is the one outside that, is one here. In our detail view, I'll say we have the text saying detail. There we go. Command R, go ahead and run the app. You should see it looks pretty good. Do try it in portrait and landscape. So I'm in landscape now in the Pro Max. You can see it's got a split view happening here with a sidebar thing. Again, the Pro Max has that regular size class in landscape mode. You can see how it looks. Again, try it in portrait, landscape, iPhone, iPad. Get a feel for how it looks. Oh, a slightly simulated glitch there. It fixed itself by itself. Fair enough. Anyway, it's a good start. Now let's try and fill in the detail view.
Navigation link, да. А мы Navigation Destination-то не сделали. Ну окей, так или иначе, я закоммичу то, что есть. Так, день 96 это у меня. Ладно. День 97 на самом деле. Часть первая из 3. Если я правильно понимаю, день 97. Часть первая из 3. Да, всего 3 части, а это первая. Много файлов, изображений и так далее. Commit. Push to origin и летим дальше. А дальше у нас следующее видео. Presenting a default detail view on iPad.
When using Navigation Split View, it's common to have the detail view presenting information about something that was selected in the sidebar view. Usually that works great. But what happens when the app is first launched? What should we show in the detail view then? Now, on iPhone, normally this isn't really a problem. Most folks are an iPhone portrait anyway, so they won't even see the detail view. They'll just see a sidebar view. But on iPad, it's more tricky. Depending on orientation, users might only see the detail view by default. Now, one easy solution here is to make a small view with some introductory instructions on to help users get started. In this project, that means making a new SwiftUI view called a welcome view. I should now ramp up my iPad simulator so I can launch in the background while I'm doing this coding. It's not very fast. So I'll press Command N, make a new SwiftUI view, and I'll call this thing, there we go, it's fast, that was wrong, welcome view, and then press Create. And then inside here will be a VStack saying the text of welcome to SnowSeeker in a font of large title. And then we'll say, please select a resort from the left-hand menu, swipe from the edge to show it.
Пауза. Please select a resort from the left menu, swipe from the edge to show it.
I'll do a foreground style of secondary. So it's all just static text. It'll only be shown when the user's first running the app. as soon as they tap any one of the links on the side, it'll get replaced with whatever they're navigating to. Now, we want to put this into content view over here. So the two parts of our UI can be used side by side. We have this text detail down here already. That's what's going to come out. We'll say that is actually going to be a welcome view. And that will now be shown. That's enough SwiftUI to understand exactly what we want here. And so try running the app on various devices. So I'll try on my iPhone 15 Pro Max. That's currently in portrait mode. So let's run it back now. We see the result listing. In landscape mode, we get our welcome screen. So we can now swipe from one edge to bring up that extra view. And then on iPad, here, that is currently in portrait mode. Again, so you only see the detail view. If you go to landscape mode, you'll see both side by side, but otherwise you see only the one. So it's a really good idea to just try things out. Try orientations, try activating split view and slide over in your iPad. Get a sense what's actually happening here. You'll see how iOS and iPadOS both do different things depending on the device orientation, whether the app has a whole screen to itself or it's in split screen or slide over or whatever.
Or whatever. Окей, это нам надо закоммитить. Окей, да. Часть вторая из 3. Presenting a default detail view on iPad. Push to origin. Come on. Следующее и последнее видео в этом дне. Creating a detail view for resorts. Полетели.
Right now, our navigation link doesn't send the user anywhere, which is fine for prototyping, but obviously not good enough for our actual project. So in this step, we're going to add a new resort view that shows a picture from the resort and some description text, plus a list of other facilities there. Like I said earlier, the content in my example JSON is mostly fictional, and this includes the photos. These are generic ski photos taken from unsplash.com. They can be used commercially or non-commercially without attribution, but I've included the photographer's credit in the JSON file so you can add it later on. As for the text, this is taken from Wikipedia, so if you intend to use that text on your own projects, it's important to give credit to Wikipedia and its authors and make sure it's clear the work is licensed under the CC by SA license. That's Creative Commons, Attribution, Share Alike. To start with, our resort view layout is going to be pretty simple. Not much more than a scroll view, a VStack, an image, and some text. The only interesting part is we're going to show the resort's facilities as a single text view by joining together to get a single string. So press Command N, make a new Swift file, choose SwiftUI view this time, call this resort view, and give it the following code. First, we'll say it has to have a resort to preview correctly, to show, up here. And the body will make a scroll view with a VStack inside, an alignment of leading. I'll do spacing 0 so things are nice and tight. Then we'll add an image using the decorative initializer that's not read out by VoiceOver. That'll be the resort ID. This will be resizable and scale to fit. And then below that, I'm going to make a group to contain the text of the resort's description. This will have a little bit of padding attached to it, but only vertically. Then a text of the facilities we have here. That will be in a font of headline. And then we'll put all facilities together, joining it together as a single string. We can say text resort facilities joined with separator of comma and a space. Again, a bit of padding vertically, like that. And then we can attach padding to the whole thing, all three views here, by attaching padding to the group right here. So we'll say padding horizontally for the whole group so they all get the same padding. Then we'll attach to the scroll view a navigation title modifier. And this is going to say, show the resort's name, then a comma, then the resort's country, all in the title like that. I'll add a title display mode of dotted line. So it's a smaller version because it's a detailed view now. You'll need to change the preview code down here to pass into example data. So I'll say our resort is just example we made earlier. That should preview more or less correctly. There we go.
Секундочку. Это есть.
Go. Boom. Got there in the end. Like that. And there's our facilities at the bottom there. Now we can go ahead and add in the code in content view to point to our actual view, which means adding a navigation destination modifier in our content view. So down here next to our title, I'm going to say there's a navigation destination for resorts being activated. And this will take a resort coming in and make a resort view out of it, passing in the resort that was chosen. So let's get a quick try. Command R, and then let's go to portrait mode. I'll choose Deer Valley. There we go, looking good. And then let's try Whistler Blackcomb. Boom. Okay. Nothing terribly interesting in our code so far, but that's going to change now because I want to add more details to the screen. I want to add how big the resort is, roughly how much it costs, how high it is, and how deep the snow is. Now we could put all that into a single H stack in our resort view back here, but that restricts what we can do in the future. So instead, we're going to split these things into two views, one for resort information, that's price and size, and one for ski information, that's elevation and snow depth. Now the ski views are easier of the two to implement, so we'll start there. We'll make a new SwiftUI view, call this thing ski details view, and then give it some code. You can say inside here, first the resort property to work with, like that, and the body will be a group, then a VStack. This will contain inside it, let's do text elevation here in a font of caption bold, and then text, let's say resort elevation M in meters with a font of title 3. That's the first one. Then a second one we'll say is a VStack with a text of the snow level. Again, font of caption bold, like so. Then text of resort.snowdepth cm centimeters, again title 3. And let's add to this thing, to the whole group around these things, a maximum frame size here, frame max width of dot infinity, and then a preview again of our resort is .example, like so. So
Такое Макс. Угу. Infinity Resort. Так, проверяю. Elevation. Ага. Centimeters.
we have given the group view itself this maximum frame width of .infinity. It won't affect the group itself because it has no impact on layout. However, it does get passed down to its child views, which means they will automatically spread out horizontally. As for the resort details, this is a little bit trickier because of two things. First, the size of the resort is stored as a value in here between 1 and 3. But really we want to say small, average, and large instead. Secondly, the price here is stored as a value from 1 to 3. But we'll replace that with $1 sign, $2 signs, or $3 signs, depending how expensive a resort is. As always, it's a good idea to get calculations out of your SwiftUI layouts so it's nice and clear. So we'll make two computed properties for size and price. First things first, make a new view for this. So Command N, SwiftUI view. This one now it's resort details view. Give it a resort property like this. Update your preview struct, pass in an example data down here. So resort is .example. And when it comes to getting the size of the resort, we could just add a small property here. We could say var size as string and send back the array small, average, and large indexed using resort.size -1. So we're saying when size is 1, subtract from that to get 0, and now send back the 0th item small. When resort size is 2, subtract 1, it's now 1, send back the first item, it's average, and so forth. You can do that. It works. But it would cause a crash if an invalid value is used somehow, and it's also a bit too cryptic for my liking. Instead, it is much safer and clearer to use a switch block, saying something like switch resort.size, and then providing all cases you care about. So we could do case 1 is just small, case 2, that's average, and then default everything else that can just be large, like so. That's a better way of doing it. As for the price property, we can leverage the same repeating count initializer we used to create example cards back in Project 17, which is string repeating count. This makes a new string repeating a substring a certain number of times. So in here, we'll say var price is a string, and send back the string repeating a $sign count of resort.price times. So again, it'll be 1, 2, or 3, $1 sign, $2 signs, or $3 signs. And now it remains in the body properties actually straightforward because we just wrote these two properties ahead of time. We could say again, there's a group with a VStack inside. Then we'll do text size, font, caption, bold, and then text of the size property. That can be font title 3. Then after that is another VStack with text price. Again, font, caption, bold, and then text of our price value.
Да, надоел мне одинаковый код писать. Точнее, переписывать. Да, а он прям любит это делать. постоянно пишет с нуля. Price.
There's a string made earlier with a font of title 3. Excellent.
Excellent.
Again, add a little frame to the group so it stretches everything outside there a bit wider as it needs to, like that. It just means I'll spread it horizontally, just like those in the previous view. And that completes our 2 little mini views. So now we can drop them into Resort View. And so back in Resort View, which is, so it ranges just a little bit. There we go. Beautiful. In our Resort View here, we have a bunch of stuff. Before the group, so after the image for the group here, I'm going to say, let's do a H stack of our resort details view, passing in the current resort. And then a ski details view, again, passing in the current resort. And add a little bit of padding vertically. And a gentle background color. Let's do primary opacity 0.1. Very, very light gray, like so. And there it is. You can see them lined up neatly. We're going to add more to that.
Не сомневаюсь. Вертикальный паддинг и gentle background of primary opacity 0.1.
In a moment. But first, I'll make one small tweak. Using joined with separator does an okay job of converting a string array into a single string, but we're not going to write just okay code. Okay, we're here to write great code where possible. Now, previously we used the format parameter of text to control the way numbers are formatted. There's a format for string arrays too. This is similar to using join separator, but rather than sending back A, B, C like we have right now, we get back A, B, and C. It's more natural to read. And so, down in our facilities text view down here, we'll just say, use the text of our resort facilities directly with a format attached of .list with type .and. Same padding. And now, run the code back, give it a try. Let's try Snowbird again. Scroll, scroll, scroll. That's only one thing. Family, great, thanks for that. Dear Valley. Fine. Family, beginners, and accommodation. The and
Еще раз.
same padding.
Формат, list, type, and.
And now, run the code back, give it a try. Let's try Snowbird again. Scroll, scroll, scroll. That's only one thing. Family, great, thanks for that. Dear Valley. Fine. Family, beginners, and accommodation. The and is because we have this and type here. You could also use .or if you want to have A, B, or C. But that's what gets us family, beginners, comma, and accommodation. It's a tiny change, but I think it's much better.
После beginners она поставила запятую. Я не знаю, может, это по правилам английского языка так ставится запятая перед and. Да, неплохо, неплохо. У меня, в принципе, тот же самый результат. Выглядит достойно. У меня на 16 Pro. Нормально, мне понравилось. Угу. Окей. Коммит. Нас ждет коммит. iOS Update. День 97, часть 3 из 3. Названием Creating a Detail View for Resorts. Commit to main. Push to origin. И И на этом закончен день 97. С чем я всех нас и поздравляю. Finished. Update. Come on. Updated to iOS 17. Что сегодня было? Да я ничего не записывал, просто все интересное было. День 97. Copy. Paste. Publish. Закрыть. Осталось 2 дня таких и 1 день на экзамен. Это большой день. Это день поменьше, день уже с челленджем. Очень интересно. Интересно. По сути, у меня 1 полноценный день остался, потому что 2 это уже челлендж. И 3 это экзамен. У меня прям чувство удовлетворения наступает. Одну секундочку. Мне будильник говорит, что мне пора. И он, знаете что, он не врет. В общем, короткие итоги. Подводим итоги сегодняшнего видео. Вот этого конкретно. Именно видео. Я в этом видео прошел день 96, день 97. Что мы изучили? Изучили, как работает NavigationSplitView, как использовать алерты и щиты с опциональными значениями, как использовать группы для того, чтобы они адаптировались под какой бы то ни было родительский контейнер. Search bar, то есть строку поиска мы делали, добавляли observable объект в environment. Что еще? Использовали ViewThatFits. Ну и много чего другого интересного. Вычисляемые свойства всякие делали и много-много всего другого. В общем, много всего. На этом видео будет заканчиваться. И перед тем, как я уже закончу этот эфир, хотел еще раз напомнить, предложить, попросить. У меня есть YouTube-канал. И если вы это смотрите в повторе, то вы смотрите это именно на YouTube. Если вы еще не подписаны, подписывайтесь на него. Также в чат вот сюда над моей головой, вот сюда вот, прилетела ссылка, пройдя по которой можно найти много других моих ресурсов. Также подписывайтесь туда, посмотрите. Вот. Я учу не только SwiftUI, не только с iOS разработкой занимаюсь. Также я немного учу веб-разработку. Конкретно сейчас изучаю JavaScript. Пару дней у меня был перерыв, но сейчас я буду возвращаться к изучению. Вот, подписывайтесь на YouTube, на Twitch и на другие ресурсы. Смотрите, также развивайтесь, не сдавайтесь, изучайте что-то новое, вкладывайтесь в сообщество, в комьюнити. Также начинайте создавать какой-то контент. По ходу вы научитесь, как делать это лучше. Ну, я, собственно, учусь. Так что вам спасибо за просмотр. Не забывайте, если вы смотрите это на YouTube, поставить лайк, подписаться на канал, написать какой-то комментарий. И если интересно будущие видео, также о них узнавать, ставьте колокольчик, включайте его, потому что иначе вам уведомления не будут приходить, что у меня вышло новое видео. Вот, а на сейчас это все. 2 часа почти я позанимался. Прекрасно. Утренняя разминка. Возможно, ну, вечером вряд ли я еще выйду на эту тему. Хотя было бы неплохо выйти и закончить это все счастье. Ну, посмотрим. Может быть, к JavaScript вернусь. А так, все. И увидимся с вами в следующий раз. Пока.